What's going on, everyone? I played a lot of TFT this past week, so you don't have to. So let's go over all the top comps, which I've updated, and we're going to focus this week on a bunch of new ones. One of them's a meme build, such as Innervating Locket Kogmaw. I'm sure people are dying to know how to play that. And the other ones I've added are Lone Hero Lux and Bronze for Life, just to give them their own little space that they could live on in the website, bunnymuffins.lol. So first things first, let's talk about the S tier. Chem-Baron Cashout. I definitely underrated this comp before, and I think it is one of the strongest, if not the strongest things ever. And the reason why I underrated it before was because I thought it could only be played situationally, but I consulted with some people, tried it out once or twice myself, a little bit more from less favorable spots, and it is just completely bonkers busted. You could start stacking in stage 3. I've seen people work off of that. You can get your streak griefed no problem and still get to 500. You could even play with 400 cash out and go first place. Not as easy to do. Not gonna say 400 is better than 500. Of course, 500 is better than 400. But this comp is dangerously OP, but I'll add a caveat. You need to know what you're doing, because you need to know how to live during the early game while still losing. So you want to lose by 1 unit every game if you could choose that. And that takes skill. And sometimes there are going to be a lot of lose streakers in your game trying to grief you. Sometimes there are other Chem-Baron players. And other times you're facing a strong board, but sometimes they have 6 units alive at the end of the fight when a better player would have made them have 4. So as long as you know how to navigate that, and I think it'll take maybe like 4 or 5 games to get comfortable with Chem-Baron, you should be able to just do a lot of Chem-Baron. When you get a decent start for it, no problem. Next comp up we have is Dominators. A lot of people have been asking me, can you do the 2-hour or 3-hour video only playing one comp video? And I'm gonna say I'm bringing that video back this weekend, because I played a lot of Dominators and I was climbing a bunch with it. Not because it's OP or anything, it definitely is good, but I actually wanted to do it for the Corki build, which is right after that. But the game just gave me a lot of AP items every game, so I just went Dominator every game. And yeah, it's like one of those comps you can just hard force. It's in the comps to one trick. Same with the Emissary Corki, same with Heimerdinger builds. I will say though that like when I say one trick, I don't literally mean every single game, but if you play it like half your games, if you ever get like any flexible augment, like yeah, you could probably play all 3 of these comps every single game. But unfortunately, the way augments work is that sometimes you get insane starts for other stuff, so you end up playing like your desired comp maybe like half the time, or like 60% of the time. If you're really degenerate, maybe 75% of the time. But definitely look out for that video this weekend. Emissary Corki, still strong. Heimerdinger Flex, same thing. Nocturne reroll, if you get a +1 range item artifact for Nocturne, like it's just one of the best comps in the game, if not the best. Renata reroll, if you get a start for it, like definitely go for it. And then Rebel, still a very strong comp if you are able to reach Jinx, because Jinx is just absolutely bonkers. It's just a question of whether you can make it there or not. So you have to pick and choose the times you play Rebel. Onto the A tier, we have the Kogmaw Scar reroll, we have the Family reroll, Bruiser Mundo, all situational comps because you need like emblems to make them work. Form Swapper Gangplank, Gangplank's always been a solid unit. Tristana reroll, Ziggs reroll. Ziggs is actually one of my favorite units right now, but I play him mainly in Dominator. Vi if you go Enforcers. Conqueror, absolutely devastating comp if you just snowball with it early. Scrap Corki, solid if you get the emblem. Blackrose Flex, just standard AP build. Urgot reroll, a lot of people are loving Urgot reroll. It's a very fun comp. I'm personally not a fan, but it is good. I have to give respect to it. But it's mainly just because I don't really like re-rolling unless I'm absolutely forced to, or if it's absolutely busted. And it's definitely a good comp, it's just not busted. Emissary Sorc, solid, and Pit Fighters, if you get great items, great augments, or you're going Family re-roll, not hitting the violets and want to pivot into something else, definitely very viable. And then in the B tier, we have a bunch of the comps that we kind of forget about, including the Locket Kogmaw build, which we will unironically go over. In the very special tier, as I said before, I added Lone Hero Lux and Bronze for Life, but nothing else really changed too much there. So let's get into the focus, which are maybe like the top 2 or 3 comps, and then all the new comps we added. So if you want like in-depth explanations of some of the other comps that we went over in the summary, they were covered extensively in the last 2 videos. So that's why I'm kind of skipping over them right now, because not too much has changed. But again, with Chem-Baron, you don't need 400 cash out anymore. And there are also 2 versions. Someone asked a very good question. Aren't you supposed to keep all your Chem-Barons in because they give a lot of HP on your units, and dropping down from 5 to 7 Chem-Baron to 3 makes you lose that bonus HP. And that is true. Chem-Baron does give a lot of HP, in case you didn't know how it worked. So essentially, every time you skip a shop, you gain max health on all your Chem-Baron units. So if you get to 7 Chem-Baron, let's say, you get 220 max health per skip. And let's say you skip the shop 4 times, like that's a lot of health, right? That's like 800 health. I'm not saying it's not a lot, but Smeech, Singe, and Renata don't really do that much. So if you are able to, and if and only if, getting 2-star legendaries over these units is going to be much more beneficial to your team over just running a bunch of Chem-Barons just because they give a bunch of health. Like, yeah, it's good, but like if you drop down to 4, like we have the emblem here, you go from 220 times 4, which is 880 health, down to 240 health. But you're able to run real units such as like Mordekaiser, Jace, things like that. So it really depends on what type of units you're hitting, or if you get like a 6-cost unit, you could slot those in too. In general, for the first few turns after the Cashout, even like the whole stage after your Cashout, you might just be running all your Chem-Baron units because they're still going to be solid because they do have a lot of health. But if you want to like giga cap your board, like 2-star legendaries, 6-cost units, they're going to be very strong, right? Like it's just how TFT works. Those are just strong units. But back to the comp, like essentially you just want to lose by 1 unit every time, and like getting a 500 Cashout is really, really nice because you can get a tier 3 item. If you type in perfected here, you can see like these all perform super duper duper well. But with a 400 Cashout, you still get a pretty decent Cashout. You get like 2 items most of the time and like some champions. You could go for like Rennie 3-star if you get a good item for Rennie, and you still get a lot of power on your board with that Cashout. I'm not saying it's ideal, but like ideal is 500. Ideal is 600. Ideal is 10,000 actually, but we don't get that in our games. So most of the time, like you're aiming for 500, but if you have to settle for 400, even 300, like I've seen people make it work. Like I recently faced this player, he did a 300 Cashout, and then he won so many games that he was able to do another 300 Cashout at the very end, which was hilarious. All I'm saying is it's very good. Next comp up we have is Dominators. So actually for Dominators, I'm going to do a very quick summary for this because I am going to be explaining everything you need to know about Dominators in the longer video coming out this weekend, where I only play Dominators for like 5 or 6 games. But essentially, you need to know that Ziggs is just completely OP. Where is Ziggs? I can't find him. He's not in the final comp, unfortunately, if you do have the emblem. But Ziggs is an absolute beast in the early game. If you get a 2-star Ziggs by stage 3-1 or even 3-2, he will just carry you all the way until you get like 2-star legendaries. I'm not even exaggerating. All you need to do is get 1 mana item on him. So that's going to be Shojin or Adaptive Helm. Either or works, so I'll put 2 Ziggs out there for you all. And then you need Red Buff or Morello. So these 2 items are going to make him just burn the other team very, very quickly or over time while everyone else tanks for him. And if he's 2-star Ziggs, he'll deal a bunch of damage as well. And since he's a Dominator, he like stacks up his AP. In long fights, he's just very, very strong. But if you have these items on him, like maybe add a 3rd item, Nashor's Tooth or Jeweled Gauntlet, like either of them work really. One, they can be transferred to Silco or LeBlanc later, or even like keep Ziggs in with the Morello if you have full items on everyone else. And he also just stabilizes you completely. Like whoever you have in the front line, just build random tank items on them and you're going to be more than good to go. Like whenever I play Ziggs 2 or get Ziggs 2-star early, I pretty much always make it to Mordekaiser, and then Mordekaiser starts carrying for me later. So essentially, all you need to know is Ziggs 2 is better than Silco 1, so I don't swap my items over until I have Silco 2-star, because I think Ziggs is just a better applier of the Morello or the red buff. But that's essentially how this comp kind of works. And then you just fast 8 or fast 9. More details to come because we will have that long form video on this. Next one up we have is Emissary, Corki, and Ambessa. You can one-trick this comp. We got like 4 different versions here, or like 3 different versions. My favorite one's going to be the first one. You don't need any legendaries to make this work. It's really good with the Tactician's Crown, Prismatic Augment, where you get an extra unit slot and the crown gives you AD, AP, and attack speed. That one's nice to do. I like putting it on Ambessa. Thieves' Gloves is really good in this comp because Vi or Ambessa can use it pretty decently. Bronze for Life, probably the best augment ever for this comp because you run so many bronze traits. So both of those are like very high priority as well. Actually, they are the highest. But my favorite part about this comp, again, is no legendaries required. And pretty much you could get first place with this board many times if you get everyone to 2-star. The only tricky part is getting both Garen and Ambessa at the same time so that you can run 4 Emissary, and they're both 4 costs. Doesn't happen all the time in one fast 8 roll down, even with like 50 gold. So you need to make sure you pick them up off of Carousel and then try to find a way to make the items work after the fact. Like, I prioritize getting 4 Emissary over getting perfect items because you just can't play the comp with 3 Emissary. So that's a tricky part about this. Next build up we have is Heimerdinger Flex. A lot of people wonder to themselves, or they've asked me before, like, how come my Heimer sucks and their Heimer's so good? The reason why is really just because of Archangels. Archangels is probably the most important damage item on him, so Heimerdinger always needs 1 mana item, so either blue buff or Shojin. Worst case scenario, it's going to be an adaptive helm, but hopefully it doesn't come to that. The only time adaptive helm is actually good is if you build it really early so you get a ton of value from it, or you have it on someone not named Heimerdinger. But after that item, like the most important one that people forget about is Archangel. So the way to build Heimerdinger is, again, 1 mana item plus a Archangel, and then the third item doesn't really matter too much. I like having some form of like scaling third item, if that makes sense. Like, obviously the third item, you want to be the third item, but what I mean by third item is stuff like Hextech Gunblade is good because you do a lot of damage with your items, so this one scales off of the more damage you do. What are other items that kind of do that? Stuff like Giant Slayer is good because it gives you damage amp. Stuff like Jeweled Gauntlet is also really good because it gives you critical strike chance on your high damage. So items like that, where they kind of scale as your champion gets stronger, are going to be really good as that third item. If you end up building like a Rabadon's Death Cap or something with this build, it's going to be okay. I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's not ideal because you already get so much AP from the Archangels, you don't need extra from the Rabadons compared to what you would get from like a Giant Slayer or a Jeweled Gauntlet. But overall, very solid build. I just want to make that distinction because, again, common question that I get asked. Now let's go on into the meme comps, because like we could skip over Nocturne. You already know how to play that. Check out the old video if you do not, or check out the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. Renata glass reroll, same thing, just easy 2-cost reroll. Zoe, you just need to fast 9 and pray you get Jinx when you play Rebels, because the comp really sucks otherwise. And then we get into the A tiers. But let's go on into the Innervating Locket Kogmaw. So people have seen this build. I think someone showed it on Reddit of someone playing this, and is it viable? Yes, it's viable. Do I plan my day around playing this comp? No. Why, you might ask? Well, it's really dependent on getting Kogmaw 3-star, and if you do not get Kogmaw 3-star, it is the worst build ever. So typically when I play TFT, I don't want to play around stuff like 2-star legendaries, even 1-star legendaries I don't want to play around, because getting a specific 1-star legendary is hard to do. 3-star 3-cost is another thing that's also really hard to get. Comps I do like to plan around are stuff like 2-star 4-cost, that pretty much can happen most of your games. 3-star 1-cost can happen most of your games also, but 3-star 3-cost, quite hard to do unless you get super econ or get a lot of copies of the units before you go for the comp. That's the only way to kind of get it. So with that in mind, let's do some data checking on Kogmaw. I'm going to go to teamfight.lol, go to Explorer, type in Kogmaw. Wait a minute, I don't need to do that. I put a link right here directly on the website, so it clicks right to it. Kogmaw 3-star with Innervating Locket averages a 3.4. What does Kogmaw average without the Innervating Locket? I think like 3.6 or something, 3.56. All right, now let's test out Innervating Locket as a 2-star Kogmaw. I want everyone to type into chat, like pause the video, type in the comments what you think the average placement is for 2-star Kogmaw with Innervating Locket. It is going to be a 5.93. So it really is just absolutely unplayable with 2-star Kogmaw, and you can't say that about other comps. You know, when you're playing like backline Kogmaw with like Rageblade, Archangels, and like a Gunblade, what do you think the average placement is going to be for that? It's going to be something like, okay, it's not that good either, but it's better than the Innervating Locket, right? Like, it's still playable. Like, I guarantee you, if you put in like 6 Automata here, it's probably not going to look that horrible, but like these probably include a lot of Nocturne games, so there's some bias there. But if we try to do that with Locket, like we're at a 4.29, not the best. So we had like 3.8 something with the regular Kogmaw build, 2-star, but like 2-star Kogmaw with 6 Automata with the Locket, 4.29. Like, you can see that it's a lot more reliant on 3-starring compared to regular Kogmaw. And without 6 Automata, like, yeah, it's just unplayable unless you get 3-star. So that's one thing to keep in mind whenever you are playing this. Make sure that you could actually get to Kogmaw 3. Ideally, maybe you go for this if you get Artifactory. That way you get Nocturne items. Because I guarantee you, a lot of the good win rate you get from the Innervating Locket is probably due to your Nocturne carrying, not so much Kogmaw carrying. Because if you put Locket on your Blitzcrank, I'm sure it would do the same exact thing, except you just have your Kogmaw in the backline and you can't brag about it on Reddit afterwards. But for Nocturne specifically, like, he just loves all the artifact items, so that's why Kogmaw could be good with those items. That's kind of like one of the biases in the data. And this is essentially more so a Nocturne comp than a Kogmaw comp. At least that's how I would play it. If someone's more gutsy, they're free to do whatever they want. They could just hard force Kogmaw, Innervating Locket every single game, frontline it with like Warmog, Stoneplate, and have a blast. But if you want to have some fun, like, sure, try this out, but it's not gonna, like, it's gonna be in the B tier for me. Too many things have to go right, and it's just not a play style for me or one that I could recommend. Oh, by the way, the reason why like the numbers show up differently, because you saw here, like, before in Innervating Locket it says 4.23, but when you click it, it goes to 4.29. The reason why is because it's counting the multiple Innervating Lockets in the filter over here, in the selection over here, and then when you click it, it shows as if you have one, and then you could add another Innervating Locket, for example. So we were at 161 games before. 8 plus 153 equals 161. So that's why the numbers kind of changed a bit from like 4.24 to 4.29. Just one thing to point out in case people were curious why the numbers kind of worked like that. But back to the Kogmaw build, like, you could do this if you want. Next build up we have is going to be the Lone Hero Lux build. So I know a lot of people have been seeing this a lot, and some people were asking me like to add it. And like, it definitely should be added because it is viable. It's actually more than viable. It's very good. Arguably hard forceable if you get the augment, because it's just very cringe. You just go 3-star Lux, BT, double Archangels, throw her in the back, get Lone Hero augment early on, and then you just chill. She will eventually kill everything, unless the other team has stuns or anything weird like that. Or they have something very, very strong that overpowers your team, and then they can 10v1 the Lux before Archangels truly start stacking. Another way to beat this comp is if you have a sniper and you kind of kill her from afar before everyone gets killed and she gets Archangel stacks, because Lone Hero only activates when her whole team is dead. So if they have like the Aurelia and like Leona alive, for example, and you kill the Lux somehow through AoE damage or like sniper damage, then that's another way to kind of beat this. But the most important thing I'd say to keep in mind for this comp, if you are playing it, is to keep your Lux in this corner over here. That way only 2 units can attack her at once for melees. If you put her on this other side where Nami is, 3 units can potentially attack her. So I always keep her in this corner and don't really reposition her. Yeah, you're more susceptible to other stuns because people know you aren't going to move, but I think the trade-off is well worth it. But the only time to go for this build is if you get the Lone Hero augment early. I don't really like to build my Lux and then hope I get it on stage 3-2. It does show up on 3-2, but I don't want to plan my day around that. Ideally, you have some form of Lux items, maybe like 2 of your components builds BT and Archangels, and then ideally you have at least like 1 or 2 Luxes on your bench before you take this. Like this one, the third one, maybe this one's optional, but the first 2 are mandatory. For anomalies, like Ultimate Hero is an obvious choice for Lux, and then Mage Armor, decent other option, but like anything that gives her more survivability generally is going to be preferred. You don't really need damage because she does so much already from these things that are stacking. But if you do get like damage on her, it's going to help more in the beginning of the fight, but her strength is at the end. But absolute worst case, you can always anomaly up one of your tanks. It's either going to be a 2-star Alawi or 3-star Singe or Aurelia. Whoever you're itemizing up as a tank up front, they could definitely use the anomaly as well. But the way to play this is really easy. Just do 1-cost reroll, 3-star your Lux, like roll out 3-1 at level 4 until 30 to 32 gold. After that, econ back up and do a slow roll for Lux 3. If you do not have her yet, on stage 4-1, roll down until you do get a Lux 3-star. And then after that, level up, add in as many Sentinels as possible. Very easy comp to play. A little boring, but some people like this because people hate facing this, and people get enjoyment out of that. So yeah, very good comp. Can be forced if you get the augment. Next comp up we have is Bronze for Life. So we already talked about Bronze for Life in the Emissary version, which we still have here. It's just the same version as you saw above, but there are other ways to play this. You don't have to play the Emissary version, even though I think it's the best one. But if you don't get Emissaries, because it's hard to get, Garen's one of the most contested units. Fast 9 is very possible, and also Twitch and Silco have builds built around them. So the most common one is probably going to be the Silco one right now, because Silco's a bit better than Twitch. Twitch isn't really that good right now, but am going to guess in future patches, once Twitch is better, people are going to be playing this version a bunch. But in the Silco version, you just build AP items, play around your Silco, and then get some beefy units in the front line. Whenever you are playing Bronze for Life, you want to pay attention to the units that have 3 traits. So in this comp, we have a bunch of them. We have Vladimir, he's Watcher, Sorcerer, and Blackrose. Rel is Conqueror, Visionary, Sentinel. Nunu's Experiment, Visionary, Bruiser. Swain is Form Swapper, Conqueror, Sorcerer. So a bunch of these have like multiple traits. The easiest ones to build around are probably Vladimir and Swain because 1, they're both sorcerers, and 2, they both have 2 other traits. So you have like 4 traits to kind of add on if you want, but they're not mandatory to. Another popular one to do this with is Gangplank, but just look for those units with 3 traits and try to just build other things around them. And then once you do get legendaries that kind of fit into your comp, swap out some of the trait units and substitute in some legendaries, because obviously legendaries are going to be much stronger, but these other builds can hold you until you get there. There are many other ways to play Bronze for Life. People can do it with Urgot as well. For example, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 traits that you have activated. You could drop down to 2 artillerists and then fit in even more. So there are many ways to play this augment. There's like going to be too many pages to kind of put in if I go ahead and do that. But the main goal of the comp is to do a fast 8 or fast 9. Roll down, see what you hit, and build around the units you get. Like play around the legendaries you hit, play around the 3 trait units you hit, and add things in one by one. Again, my favorite version of this is going to be the Corki Emissary version, just because that comp is strong on its own already, so adding in Bronze for Life just makes it S++ tier. I honestly don't see how you could lose if you get Bronze for Life plus the Emissary build, all 2-star, even though it does not run any legendaries. But hopefully this video kind of helped everyone out a bit. The way I'm going to play the patch is literally going to be the same from last week. I'm first going to look to see if I could do an artifact item build. Stuff like Suspicious Trenchcoat for family, anything that gives range for Nocturne, Emblem comps, both the Autonoma comps are really good, Chem-Baron really good, Rebel really good, Dominator really good. And then if I have AP items, I'm going to default to one of these builds, and if I have AD, one of these builds. Now let's get into the comments of the week. First, I'm not going to show these comments because I don't want to like call these people out, but a lot of people have been complaining about the placement of Rebel comps, and all their comments, they talk about like units that aren't named Jinx. But in my previous videos, I talked about how important Jinx is to this comp, but I guess I have to do it again because people are saying like, oh, I hit this, I hit that, and Jinx is the most important thing. Like if you get 7 Rebels and you get Jinx, it's not enough. As a 1-star, that is. Like you'll average like a 5 point something. Let's see how much of the data has changed. 4.85. Not the best, right? And that's hitting a legendary, but let's change this actually to Diamond Plus, let's say. 5.0. If we change it to Master, I'm guessing it's going to look a little worse. 5.03. And then if you exclude Jinx and say you don't hit Jinx, you're going to be averaging like what, 5.9? 6.05? The only way this comp actually works is if you get Jinx 2-star. So don't just force Rebel mindlessly. You have to get Jinx 2 to play it. And then boom, 2.79. Like, I know it's hard to hit 2-star legendaries. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very difficult to do actually. But this is one of those Exodia comps. That's why I like the Dominator comp a lot more, because with Dominator, like 1-star Mord has done wonders for me in all my games of Dominator. Obviously, I still like the 2-star though. The second comment is, can you explain why the Runon's Rageblade combo in the context of builds and guides is never recommended? And the answer to that is pretty simple. So let's look at Twitch, for example, because he's a great user of Rageblade and also of Runons. But you'll notice in the data for like any AD champion, like you could look at Twitch, you could look at like Caitlyn, all of them, you'll find that Runons always performs really well. Like all these items up here are like 4.3 and above, but Runons is a 4.3 flat. However, you'll rarely see people saying like, oh, Runons is the best item ever. The reason why is because the sample size is a bit lower, so oftentimes people take these items, same for like Guardbreaker, Giant Slayer, things like that. Adaptive Helm is another great example of an item that's like really good in the data, but never recommended. But whenever you're on a late games carousel and you are in first place, so your last pick, like oftentimes those items are going to be left over, and they're still very good for units like Twitch, like Runons. But because you're first place already, you're going to have more health than other people, so you're just going to place better than other people in general. Second, these items are not recommended as like best in slots very often. because oftentimes enough, like, units just need very specific things. So for example, for Twitch, he wants Rage Blade because he just really wants to attack very, very quickly. And then Infinity Edge makes all his stuff crit really nicely. And that's like a pretty decent combo because he gets damage amplification from his sniper buff. Then you need something like Last Whisper when you play a lot of attack damage comps, and unless Twitch is holding it, someone else has to hold it. So you pretty much always have to build Last Whisper. So you just use 2 bows. How are you going to get a 3rd bow for Runons, you know? Like, if you are able to get that 3rd bow, great. And then any bow item will do well. You could do like 2nd Rage Blade. You could do a red buff if you get a 4th bow. Giant Slayer is really good. And then, like, of course, there's Runons as well. So that's why it feels a little weird when that does happen. But Runons is an absolutely good item. Don't feel bad about building it, especially early game. In fact, I think a lot of newer players don't build a lot of these, like, not the best but very good items very often. Like, they only go for 10 out of 10 items. They skip over the 9 out of 10 items, and then they have 5 unbuilt components for like 10 rounds and then lose 30 extra health because of that. That's not a good thing. But something I explained in the previous video is that I really like the Runons plus Deathblade combo. The reason why is because Deathblade gives a lot of attack damage, and then Runons kind of scales off of attack damage because you fire an extra bolt. So that's why I like that specific item combo. The 3rd item to combo with that would be something like a Rage Blade, so they attack more and more and more. And it's mainly catered to like very attack-oriented units, rather than something like a Spellcaster. For example, if I am playing Violet, Violet loves casting her spell. Runons is going to be okay, but not that great. But on something like Twitch, where he's auto-attacking a bunch and hitting a lot of random units, like Runons is a very nice effect. But pretty good question, and maybe I have to make an item video in the future to kind of explore that further. The last comment we're going to go over this week is, I was Diamond 2 years ago, but I went to prison and I actually just got home, and this video is helping me catch up to see how much TFT has changed. Thanks for the video. I love the random tangents and analogies you go into. So I think everyone, let's just give a round of applause to this person for getting out of prison. If anyone else does know other people maybe getting back into TFT or maybe new to TFT, feel free to share my videos to them, because I think they are a very good way to kind of get back into the game. And if they are not, let me know why in the comments below, and I'll try to improve on that. But if you want your question featured in the next video, I'm trying to answer as many as I can. And if the question is interesting enough or unique enough, I will definitely be adding it into the next compilation. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this. Definitely look out for the Dominator video. I'm going to start recording that right now, so hopefully I could get it out sometime very soon. I'm actually going to skip the stream tomorrow. I said I would do weekly streams, but if I have to make like a 3-hour video, I just don't have time to do both. So, and we will review those games in the next week, or maybe I do a bonus stream on like a different day. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this, and I'll see you all next time.